You are listening to the Critical Mass Radio Show, Orange County's business talk show, focused on exploring topics of interest to CEOs who are leading middle market companies. With your host, Richard Franzi.
Hello and welcome to Orange County's longest running business talk show. And yes, I am your host, Rick Franzi, and we have an exciting show planned for you today. Why? Because Stephan Erkelens is our guest. Sorry, Stephan. And he is the co-founder and CEO for RevHubOC. Stephan, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you, Rick, and congratulations on your long-running show. We're fans of it.
Well, thank you very much. And yes. It's been a joy. So let's get right into talking about you. I said in the top that you're the co-founder, CEO of RevHubOC. First of all, take us back in time, the origin story. What did you see in the marketplace that you said, hey, I got an idea for something I could start that would benefit the community? Tell us about that.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. It's probably more what we didn't see as a society. So 20 years in the for-profit business world and 10 years in running nonprofits, and realize that the problems of the world, social and environmental, are getting larger and the solutions are getting smaller. We started to look at around the world, what is working? How do we scale? How do we look at the need and the problem as an opportunity to solve? And in that journey, just discovered that around the world, especially in Southeast Asia, Australia, and Europe, they're so far ahead of us in addressing these problems at scale. As we looked in the US, we realized we had a vacuum. We today look at problems based on two silos. One is the for-profit world and then the nonprofit world. For-profit is where you make money, and nonprofit is where you go do good, and both of which shall not scale.
So let's talk a little bit about the model for RevHubOC, and maybe as other founders have found that as they bring their vision to reality, they have pivots, either because the business model could be adapted initially or because over time things change and they need to respond to that external change. I don't know what your situation is, but let's talk about the pivots that you might have had to RevHubOC over the time.
Okay, let's first define what we're talking about: social entrepreneurship and social enterprise. What is that? And that is this sort of blended model. It's you can look at it as a nonprofit that has a financially sustainable way of supporting itself and scaling, which is practically non-existent. Then you have the alternative is a for-profit that has a double bottom line expectation. The businesses are called social enterprises, do well by doing good in a most simplistic way. The challenge that we saw was the need to build an ecosystem that was supportive of those type of enterprises and entrepreneurs, because we live in a siloed reality in the United States. There's a need for significant supports to make that happen. So as what we refer to as an ecosystem, in order for these enterprises to flourish, you need the know-how, so the knowledge or intellectual capital. You need the know-who, the social capital and the connections, and eventually the financial capital that is very different. It's a capital that's aligned with your mission, aligned with your purpose, and that rewards that double bottom line: impact, the social environmental challenge, as well as a financial return. And so, because those are far and few between, we need to create an environment, an opportunity for those players to pull those laces in and help build these enterprises and support these entrepreneurs. We started in 2019. And yes, of course, like everything, we learned our lessons the hard way, because some of us are stubborn. But the good news is, in those 4 years, we've learned how to address the biggest gaps and create an opportunity, not just for your typical entrepreneur that usually comes from some type of self-sufficiency or has some type of wealth, but for all entrepreneurs across the spectrum.
So a couple follow-ups, if I could, Stephen. Are the entrepreneurs who are coming to you who have this awareness, are they generally different than what would we think of as a traditional entrepreneur who maybe doesn't look at the double bottom line, only looks at the single bottom line? And if so, in your experience, how are they different?
Well, that's a great question. One, I believe that most entrepreneurs start off with a purpose. I don't meet too many entrepreneurs that want to build a business to make a bunch of money. Usually they want to solve a problem. And usually that problem is very central to who they are.
Yes.
Around the world, those entrepreneurs, the successful ones, are mainly women or people who are disenfranchised from the system because their learned experiences, their life lessons equip them to be great at addressing social and environmental, these challenges. So what we find is that, number one, the entrepreneur has a predisposition, if everything else is equal, to address something that has purpose, that has something that can change the world. So the typical entrepreneur that usually comes to our door is the one that has the wherewithal to go play in this arena. Unfortunately, they're probably not the right kind of entrepreneur. Yes, entrepreneurship in America is alive and well. But if you think about and you look at statistics, only 2% of all venture capital goes to women started businesses. That's unconscionable, especially as we compare it with Europe and Southeast Asia, where 52% of all social enterprises are started by women, and 58% are started by people who are normally considered minorities. So these are underrepresented groups, but more importantly, underappreciated in their value. So we had to address that component as well as how do you build and scale a social enterprise. We don't have the right kind of entrepreneurs, the flow of the right kind of entrepreneurs yet in the United States, which is something we're really focused on.
So maybe you could give me your perspective on this. Part of what you talk about in the ecosystem is the availability of investment capital, right? That's so important to scale. Is the investment community in the US, in your opinion, do they understand the double bottom line, what the social enterprise, or has that been part of what RevHub has been doing here in Orange County, is sort of sharing the mission and explaining the purpose?
Well, I wouldn't say that it's the capital that's the problem. It's the way we in our culture perceive what success is. So if I look at my 401k plan, or I look at my investment, or I look at my portfolio manager or whatever position you're in, we're usually pushing the return, the financial return. We tend to want higher and greater financial returns. And what we do in the process is we push companies to reduce their costs, increase their profitability, look for substitute ways of doing things in order to cheapen it. And in the process of cheapening, we become extractive rather than regenerative. Regenerating means investing in our resources, investing in people, investing in the environment. And if we don't reward it as capitalists, then it should not be a surprise that we're seeing a depletion of those resources, because there's nobody saying, I will reward you for doing that. Usually that's a problem that's left for the public sector or philanthropy, and they're not equipped to address it.
Trees don't grow to the sky, right? There's a certain capacity for any organism to grow. And this idea that public companies every quarter can be better than the previous quarter, to your point, at some point becomes debilitating potentially to the company, doesn't it?
That's correct. And to society and the community.
Then into the larger scale, yes. So tell me about the role RevHubOC is playing in this ecosystem. Who are you helping? What are the problems that your organization is helping to solve, and who fits the model the best? Who can you help the most in the way you've set the organization up?
So there's two answers to that question. First is who can we help the most,
Okay.
and then who we need to help in order to be successful. So the first one is easy. Who can we help the most? Those people that already have a great idea, that are just looking for a way to retain the value of the impact. So, hey, I have this idea for this business. I've started to test it, and what I want to make sure is that in my strategy, both my network, my customer, and my financial stakeholders don't skew me away from having the impact that I have. So we're focused in two major areas: climate, mainly on resilience and adaptation, and I can explain that further if necessary, and two, on health equity. Those are the reason why we focus on those two specific niches, all the large niches, is because that's where the largest amount of capital is available on a worldwide basis. Those are problems that society has decided they want to solve and solve now.
So how do you do that?
We reach out to the marketplace. We work with every single group out there, with universities. We work with angel investment groups, with other venture capital firms, and we basically let them know the type of entrepreneur and business that we're looking for. Usually the ones that they reject or can't fund because it's longer play and has a lower return maybe.
Uh-huh.
And then we have an incubation program through which we run them. It's a 6-month incubation program that provides them all the skill set. Most people don't really understand how to sell their company or position their company in a way that people value the impact. And it's very important because it's an art form. The world has established parameters. The United Nations has developed their Sustainable Development Goals, which we've all signed up to. And basically, you need to be able to articulate how you're creating value beyond the financial return for society by measuring that impact based on these standards and then quantifying it in a way that people can put a value to it. So when you talk about exit strategies, when you talk about partnerships, when you talk about merger and acquisitions, all these things, the value of companies is predicated on your ability to clearly demonstrate and sell what is the value you're creating. What are you saving? What are you saving society? What are you saving taxpayers from having to pay for? So if you take a typical extractive company, they will provide a great financial return, but if we quantified the negative impact that they have, what it costs society to remediate that challenge, if we accreted that to their bottom line, we'd have a very different return and realization, because we're paying to solve some of the problems that they're creating, and vice versa. With a social enterprise, you need to be able to demonstrate and show any dollars you're pumping back in, regenerating, or you're saving society from having to solve.
You know, as you explain that, Stephen, I think of sometimes the argument that's been made against the tobacco companies or the petroleum companies. You know, there are unintended or intended impacts of them on society, and someone is paying that price. Doesn't show up in the stock price or the performance of the individual companies or the industry, but it does show up in society based on, you know, kind of your healthcare or whatever it might be. So that's interesting. What is it that is in your background that motivated you to do this?
Well, when you're in business to make money, you realize that you are creating pain, you're causing pain, and you justify it for a while, but then reality comes to face you. And so you can't cast a blind eye to the reality of the negative impact you're having on society or on the environment. You try to solve it through your business, and it's challenging because nobody rewards that behavior. On the contrary, you get penalized. You tell your shareholders, hey, I'm going to reduce my return, my projected return, because I really want to change the world. and people will sell your stock and get out of your business and go to your competitor who's not offering that benefit. So after trying the for-profit, I did what most people do. They call it a midlife crisis. I stopped being a for-profit business entrepreneur and moved into nonprofit and spent 10 years trying to solve the problem at scale. And nonprofits are ideally equipped to deal with immediate needs and emergencies. But when you think about scale, where does the funding come from? So it's the profit component that makes it economically sustainable, thus scalable.
Is Orange County the right and business community for this initiative, Stephen?
Ouch. I live in Orange County. My partners and my founders live in Orange County. This is where we're seeing our children. We want our children to thrive. We want opportunities for people in Orange County to be able to stay here and create a living and have a decent income. And so Orange County is the ideal place because everywhere else it might be a little simpler to do. And so what happens in Orange County, so goes California, and what happens in California, so goes the nation. Right. I believe that this is the way, and it's already starting to happen. So I think this is the right place to do it. We have all the stakeholders, all the needs.
There are companies that I think of that have a mission to their social enterprise, and they've gotten recognition for that. Maybe Tom's is an example of a company that had a social awareness and used their success to help solve what they thought was a critical problem. I'm wondering, from your experience, do customers, does the marketplace resonate with the social enterprise mission that the entrepreneur has? Are they able to create preference in the mind of consumers potentially because of their position that they're taking to create a business that does good as well as is successful?
That's a question we ask ourselves all the time. And there's all sorts of research, and you have the LOHAS movement, and you have all sorts of movements that have started that get rewarded by the customer for their social conscious or environmental conscious. But it is cliquish. In the end, it doesn't address it at scale. So the ideal way to address this is, how do we change the way we do business? And in most cases that we see, there's no need to compromise on returns. There's a way to do both. The question is in what order and with what kind of priority. So you need patient capital and early start. You need to get to a certain point where you have the scale to do this in a way that you can be extraordinarily profitable and extraordinarily impactful. But it takes time. Patagonia is a great example. You mentioned Tom Cruise, which is the way we used to think, but eventually customers caught on to the fact that I pay you twice for the price of shoes so you can go donate a pair to somebody else. Why don't you cut the price in half and let me donate the shoes, right? So you have to be genuine, you have to be authentic, you have to be transparent, and it can't be gimmicky. So the only way that we see that happening, and that's the way it's taking place, is eventually having the scale so you can compete with equal products that are not as impactful, and two, to change the way we look at accounting, right? The way we look at what is the real return. So there's a whole movement that's referred to as impact adjusted accounting. I envision one day, perhaps not in the long term, but in the short term, where companies will be evaluated and adjusted for the cost that it has to society to remediate their negative impact.
That would be an interesting conversation in the boardroom of these corporations, wouldn't it? Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And maybe it takes outside investors who are agitating for that conversation to happen, to change what is historically. What is your view of B corporations and that movement relative to the work that you're doing with RevHubOC?
Anything that highlights the problem, which is this huge capitalism we've created that rewards short-term results at the expense of impact, is a good thing. A certification is only as good as your ability to prove that your certification is delivering the value. I believe that in today's world, there are better ways of measuring impact, quantifying impact, and translating into your P&L and your balance sheet.
Yeah, there is a tendency for greenwashing, right? Where we behave in a way that the outside world can see it as benefiting, but nothing's really different, or not different enough, maybe, to really make at scale the kind of changes that, I believe entrepreneurs are problem solvers. And I love what you're doing, because if you continue to grow entrepreneurs who have a different sense of what solving the problem means, that can only continue to generate others who then, once they see that that's possible, then maybe with the millennials and Gen Z, and hey, I'm a boomer, maybe there are some boomer entrepreneurs too who see the world differently, that really becomes a normalized way to approach a business conversation. What do you see as the future for RevHubOC?
Well, we're right in the middle of that strategic plan. So the work that we've done here in our several partnerships with UC Irvine and several other groups here has got significant attention on a nationwide basis.
Nice.
More importantly, the work that we launched a year and a half ago with support from the public sector to reach out and develop accesses, or what we call illuminated pathways, or removing barriers to entrepreneurship for these underestimated entrepreneurs that live in places or live in conditions where the whole idea of entrepreneurship, it seems impossible. And so equality of opportunity, not equality of outcome. They still have to go get their customers and they still have to perform, but providing those bridges is critically important. Those two things have resonated at the federal level, and we've been invited to create a blueprint to basically take what we're doing here and do something on a nationwide basis, piloting in a couple of states. We're hoping that by the end of this year, beginning of next year, we'll be expanding RevHub into 3 other states.
Is that a picture of the Cove behind you? What is that building I see on the monitor?
Yeah. We're housed at the UC Irvine campus in this is called Beal Applied Innovations, or the innovation sector. We're actually incubated by UC Irvine, the Beal Applied Innovation Center. So we started off here. We're very appreciative of the work that they've done, because this is an incredible campus. They get all sorts of issues on sustainability. They're leading thought leaders, and so we love being here. And yes, we're not part of UCI, but we're incubated by them.
Nice. Have you found any billionaires that happen to be in Southern California, Orange County in particular, that resonate with what you're doing at RevHubOC?
Not yet, but they're about to hear from us.
Okay. Well, good luck with that mission.
I think once people understand, right? So it's we're looking for influencers, right? Affluent people here in Orange County and Southern California that can take a hard look at the work that we're doing. And because it does meet, billionaires, as you mentioned, they have their for-profit arm where they make their money, and then they have their foundation or their DAF or whatever. Right. And they can coexist for greater good for society. So we're working actively at getting their attention. But as you know, as a small company and a small group, you got to earn your stripes.
Yes, you do. It takes time. Well, I am so happy that you agreed to be a guest on today's show and to share your story and RevHubOC's story. Thank you. I wish you continued success, and I'd love to hear that there could be acceleration of the model in other markets and other states. So that's fantastic. Thank you, Stephan.
Well, I appreciate your interest, and anybody who wants to connect with us can go to our website, RevHubOC.com, and inquire further. We'd be happy to support anybody interested.
And if they'd like to connect with you on LinkedIn, that's how we connected. Is that okay too? Okay.
That's perfect. They can find me Stephan, Stephan, RevHubOC.com. They'll find me on LinkedIn.
Well, I encourage people to do that. I want to thank you for your time today. I've enjoyed this conversation very much.
Thank you very much, Rick. Keep doing what you're doing. It's great for us and great for OC.
I'd like to thank the audience. You're a part of Orange County's longest running business talk show. Stephan's interview now joins our catalog of over 1,500 interviews. If you happen to be an Orange County entrepreneur and you would like to share your story, or maybe you're a nonprofit leader and you would like to talk about the mission of your organization here in Orange County, reach out to me, excuse me, on LinkedIn. I'm Rick, R-I-C, Franzi, F-R-A-N-Z-I. And between Haley, our producer, and myself, we can talk to you about what's involved in getting you ready to be a guest on a future episode. Until the next time we all have a chance to be together, I hope all of your decisions will move your organization in a positive direction.